Namaste, good morning, everyone, sisters and brothers, to today's session of Young Indian Theosophists, organized by the Indian section. And I welcome you all on my personal behalf, on behalf of Young Indian Theosophists and Indian section. And today we have a very important subject to study, to deal with. But before that, let us all come together in heart and mind to invoke that universal principle in which we live, we move, and have our being. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Welcome back once again, everyone. And so, as you are aware, therefore one with every other. The YouTube sound was coming. So today we have a very important subject, or rather today we are starting a new book, which is one of the three jewels of theosophical literature, Light on the Path. And before we actually move on to the book, the aphorisms given in that, it starts with some preliminary statements, 4 preliminary statements. So we'll be studying those statements today. And although they are preliminary, we'll see how deep they are, how profound they are. And to present these preliminary statements, the first 2 preliminary statements, we have with us today Sister Smitapragyan Patro. And although we all know her, she has been a very vital force in the Young Indian Theosophist movement, but still, just to share her background, she became a member of the Theosophical Society in 2006. Currently, she is the president of the Pythagoras Youth Lodge, Utkal Theosophical Federation. She completed her BTech in biomedical engineering and currently working as a senior product specialist in BPL in Hyderabad. So without wasting any further time, I request Sister Smita to take us on this journey to study the first 2 preliminary statements in Light on the Path. Over to you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So we will start with this first 2 preliminary statements. Before that, a short brief introduction of the book. So we have 15 rules in the 2 parts. The book is divided into 2 parts, and first part is 15 rules, and second part is with 15 rules. So these rules are written for all disciples. This is not a book intended for the world in general. The word disciple is to be considered in 2 senses, the uninitiated and the initiated. In reading the book carefully, we can trace the 2 distinct lines of teaching clothed in the same words. Each sentence contains a double meaning, one intended for more and the other for the less advanced. We will try to trace them out when we come to the preliminary statements. So the first of the 4 statements is, before the eyes can see, they must be incapable of tears. So this is the first statement, which describes the 4 qualifications preliminary to the path proper. They describe true sight, true hearing, true speech, and true standing in the presence of the master. That is to say, true ability to serve mankind under his direction. These statements are intended for two classes of disciples. In the first class are those who are on the probationary path, and in the second class are those who are already initiated. These statements can be taken from two quite different point of view in other way also. These teachings come from masters of the White Lodge, but exactly the same statements are made by those who follow the black magic of the dark side of life, whom we sometimes speak of as the brothers of the shadow or of darkness. There are two ways in which the eyes may become incapable of tears. One way is that of man who aspires to become a disciple of the dark side. He will try to become incapable of tears by killing out all feelings. He will become completely indifferent to pleasure and pain by means of hardening the heart and avoiding all sympathy. On the other hand, the man of the white path is becoming incapable of tears only as far as his own personal sorrows are concerned. His own lower nature does not move him, but he is fully awake to the feelings of others. So I'll show you the table actually. This is the table. So we may contrast the two ways in the table, in dark path and white path. So in the dark path, first thing is shuts out all feelings of sorrow. They will not feel any sorrow or pain. And in the white path, increases the power of feeling until it responds to every vibration of others. So in this, a disciple can feel everybody's pain and suffering and sorrows of another people. And the second in this second point is in the dark path, puts up a wall round oneself to shut out all sorrows. So they will make a shell around themselves so that they will the sorrow and pain of the world will not affect them at all. But in the white path, throws down every wall or barrier that separates and prevents one from feeling the sorrows of others. So they will break all the barriers to feel the pain and suffering of the world. They don't disconnect them from the world. They always try to connect, to be connected with the world, to be connected with the loved ones. So this is the second point in the white path. And in the dark path, third point is fundamentally contrasts the life. Yes, if they will make a shell around themselves and they will disconnect all the contacts from the world, then their life will be contracted. But in the white path, the life expands because they try to connect with the world. Their consciousness grows, so they can feel the pain and sorrow of the living beings. So in the fourth point, it finally in the dark path, it leads to death and destruction and avicii. But in white path leads to life, immortality, and nirvana. So now the fundamental difference between the two ways is that the first tends towards separateness all the time and ends up in a condition of absolute isolation, while the second aims constantly at union and ends in the state of perfect unity. The aspirant on the white path has gradually to eliminate everything concerning his personal self. He must reach a point where he is incapable of feeling sorrows for his own separate interest and work at the difficult task of making himself responsive to all the sorrows of his fellow men. It would be very easy for him to kill out every feeling, but to become increasingly sensitive towards the feelings of others at the same time not to permit any personal feelings to come in is the much more difficult task set before the aspirant. As he goes on with the work, however, he will find that his selfish emotions quietly disappear as they become converted into unselfish emotions. So there will not be any personal emotions or personal feelings come in their ways. And in the same way, they can they become so sensitive that they can feel the pain and sorrow and suffering of their fellow being. The disciple may test the quality and genuineness of his sympathy by looking to see whether or not he feels it when the suffering of others is not intruded upon his notice. If we see a person suffering, no doubt you feel pain. But do you feel the same pain when the person is not before your sight? A simple example. We are going on the road and in a vehicle, and we see a small animal and one maybe a car or any vehicle has they ran over that uh, animal. We see when we see that sight, immediately we feel pain and we feel so our heart aches, and then immediately when we passes that sight, immediately in 1 or 2 minutes we forget that. So this is the thing the writer wants to tell, that if we see a person suffering, we feel pain. But do we feel the same pain when we are not present in front of that person, or when we are not present in that particular site? So the disciple has to learn to live as if the whole of that suffering were present before him all the time. His motive in life must be to help humanity, whether the suffering be before his eyes or not. For that is the real motive power of the disciple. When the disciple passes through initiation and begins to develop the buddhi consciousness, the incapacity for tears takes on a new character. He then begins to understand the word evolution. He understands the value of the suffering because he sees necessity for the higher development of his soul. Because the suffering he is undergoing is the result of his past karma, and the pain is bringing him wisdom and is thereby promoting his evolution. So here he wants to say that the equanimity. So whatever situation comes before the eyes can see, it must be incapable of tears. So means whatever situation comes, it's good or bad. If bad comes, we shouldn't have tears in our eyes. And if the situation is good according to us, then also we shouldn't be so excited about. So the thing is, here we are talking about the suffering and pain and tears in our eyes. So I'll tell you one story. There was a farmer in a small village with a single horse who helped him earn a living for his family. The other villagers constantly told the farmer how lucky he was to have such a great horse. Maybe, he would reply. One day the horse ran away. The villagers came to the farmer to express their sympathy. Your horse ran away. How unfortunate, the villagers exclaimed. Maybe, the farmer replied. A few days later, the horse returned home with 10 strong wild horses in tow. What good fortune, what incredible luck, the villagers crowed. Maybe, the farmer again replied. The following week, the farmer's son was riding one of the wild horses in the fields when it kicked him off and broke his leg. The villagers arrived to express their dismay. What dismay, luck, they said. Maybe, the farmer replied. The next month, a military officer marched into the village, recruiting able young men for the war. The farmer's son, with his broken leg, was left behind. The villagers were joyful. Your son has been spared. What beautiful luck. The farmer simply smiled. Maybe. Most of our pain, most of our suffering comes from resistance. We suffer because we resist. Whatever happens, we don't accept it. So a man went to a Buddhist monastery for a silent retreat. After he finished, he felt better, calmer, stronger. But something was missing. The teacher said he could talk to one of the monks before he left. The man thought for a while, then asked, how do you always stay calm and happy always? The monk said, I say yes to everything that happens. I say yes. Realizing the reason of pain and suffering, the disciple reaches a condition in which he may be described as full of the most perfect sympathy, but without regret. The sense of regret comes in only when the consciousness is unilluminated by the Buddhic life. When the Buddhic consciousness is felt, the disciple's sympathy increases enormously, but his regret disappears. And as he rises higher, this wider view makes him incapable of tears. That is the condition which has been described as the Christ state. The disciple is filled with content and satisfaction. He feels the suffering, but of grief and sorrow, he feels none at all. When the disciple reaches this stage, his consciousness has become part of the life of the world. If he thinks of himself as I, it is as a part of that I in which all other is also exist. He identifies himself with the one great life in whatever stage it may be. Whenever it is in need of help, he entirely loses the sense which is so common in the world. Then he is in all and with all. So I'll narrate a story for this. So once Bodhisattva walked in the forest, he came upon a tigress and her cubs, exhausted by hunger and thirst. The tigress was hardly able to move and looked as if she would soon die. She could not feed her hungry cubs. Bodhisattva was so compassionate that he decided to feed the poor animal by sacrificing himself and laid himself down in front of the tigress. So, this is the thing he was trying to explain, the unity, the I-ness. So, I am in all and everyone in me. So, this is the thing. He was in the in that state that he could feel the unity of life. He could able to feel the suffering and pain of anybody, I mean any other, I mean surrounding him. So he was trying to help them. He was trying to reduce the pain and suffering of his fellow being, or we can say any other living beings. When the disciple is helping anyone, he feels his troubles as his own. Therefore, instead of assisting him from the outside, he is helping him from within. This is the next step. So, there is the world of difference between the help given by one from the outside and that which is given from within. The former is a temporary and adventitious aid, but the inside help adds to the power of the man's life. So we will go to the next statement. Before the ear can hear, it must have lost its sensitiveness. The disciple must become entirely indifferent to the opinions of others about himself as far as his own feelings are concerned. If they think and speak well of him, he is not to be elated. If ill, he is not to be depressed. This thing, generally, this thing happens to every one of us. If anybody says good about us, if anybody praised us, then we become so overjoyed. And when anybody we hear anything bad about ourselves from anyone or any source, then we feel depressed. So this is the thing disciple must not do. The disciple, in the course of his progress, develops his psychic powers and so become conscious of what others are thinking about him. He is then living in a world in which he may hear everything said about him and may see every criticism in the mind of another. He must reach to the point when he has risen above all criticism and is not affected by the opinions of others. Once there was a Zen master who was living a pure life. Whenever he was passing by the villagers, the villagers were praising him that master, you are so pure of heart, and we are blessed to have a saintly person like you with us in our village. But for that, he used to say, is that so? A beautiful girl in the village was pregnant. Her angry parents demanded to know who was the father. The embarrassed girl pointed to the Zen master, whom everyone previously revered for living such a pure life. When the outraged parents confronted him with their daughter's accusation, he simply replied, is that so? The Zen master took good care of the girl, and after the child was born, he took very good care of the child. But one day the girl could no longer withstand the lie she has told. She confessed that the real father was a young man in the village whom she had tried to protect. The parents and the villagers immediately went to the Zen master and with profuse apologies, they explained what had happened. The villagers praised him again for his selfless deed, to which he replied, is that so? So it must not be thought that the developed person who hears uncomplimentary remarks about himself and is profoundly indifferent to them deliberately nerves himself against the feeling of irritation and says, that is all very dreadful, but I refuse to care. I'll not pay any attention to it. This this doesn't happen so early or immediately that no, if I hear anything bad about myself and I don't feel bad, I simply ignore that. Okay, whatever is happening is for good. So it doesn't happen in a day or two. So he passes no doubt through his days like this, but very soon he reaches a state where he absolutely and utterly does not care when it is just like the twittering of birds. Gradually, this thing happens. Like immediately, like we will not become a saintly person, or we will not become masters, or we will not control our emotions like that. We can't, but it this state comes over time with practice. So after that, after practicing this, what happens? This words or this if people says anything bad about us, then that will be just like the twittering of birds or like the cicadas whistling in the trees. They may be a nuisance, but that is all. He does not pick out one particular cicada and listen to its tone alone, nor does he single out the thought or the word of any one person who is saying something silly. We must all try to reach that stage we are constantly putting before people, because it is the attitude of our masters in the world we are trying to go. So, thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And now, our next speaker, I'll introduce our next speaker, Brother Shikhar. So, we all know him very well. So, he doesn't need any introduction. Still, it's a protocol, so I'll do it. So, he is a member of Theosophical Society since 2008, and he is a volunteer at TS ADR, and he is a national and international speaker of TS. So, our brother will speak about the third and fourth statement. So, welcome, brother, and over to you now.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Smita. And just a thought arose when you were giving the introduction, just a thought for contemplation or meditation maybe later, that how do we feel when we are introduced? And does it create any, does it affect our hearing, as Sister Smita was saying before the ears can hear, we should become, totally in the state that we are not affected by all those things. But anyway, thank you for the wonderful presentation, and let me start with this one. And although Sister Smita has given a small introduction of the book, since we are starting, I just took the liberty of sharing some of the things about this theosophical jewel, Light on the Path, which is, by the way, considered the very advanced book. Like I mean, any book can give someone some insight, but it is normally viewed that at the feet of the master is in the beginning, and then Voice of the Silence, and then Light on the Path. Although Light on the Path was the one that was written first. And how it was written, because normally we think that Mabel Collins, who was the writer, she wrote it, but just like HPB says, she's just a writer of the secret doctrine, not the author. Similarly, this book, Light on the Path, has also passed through stages, through phases. And Mabel Collins, who was a well-known theosophical member, and also collaborated with Madame Blavatsky in the editorship of Lucifer, she wrote it through the guidance and dictation of Master Hilarion. But even Master Hilarion received it from his own teacher, the great one who among the theosophical circles is sometimes called Chauhan, the Venetian, Chauhan Venetian. But even he is the author, only a part of it. So then how it came in the present form, it consists, as Sister Smita earlier told, that although it consists of 10 leaves, and on each leaf there are 3 lines. So total of 30 lines or 30 aphorisms are there, 15 in the first part, 15 in the second part. And in this book, when we read, these 30 lines are highlighted in bold black type, so we can easily read that these are the aphorisms. And earlier, the language of the aphorisms was in an archaic form of Sanskrit. Then the Chauhan Venetian translated from Sanskrit to Greek for the use of his Alexandrian pupils, of which Master Hilarion also was one of them in his incarnation as a Syrian philosopher known as Iamblichus. So this is also gives us some insight that although we can label these adepts as being belonging to a country or a body or a form, but they are actually beyond. And it's also give insight to us that we can identify ourselves as some nationality, some religion or caste, but in every incarnation, it may change, and most likely it will change. So which country do we actually belong to? Only the one that we are living now? So in the next, maybe the person we are, we do not like of the nationality, maybe then most likely that disliking will attract us, the karma will put us in that country. So anyway, so these all aphorisms he translated, and not only translated, he added certain explanations. So all these explanations and the additions of the Han Venetian are printed in the ordinary type. And along with the original aphorisms, it was published in 1885, and Master Hilarion translated it back from Greek to English and gave it that form. And in that also he added some of his comments. And as Sister Smita rightly pointed out, that this book is dedicated, although there is another dedication in the beginning, that those who do not know the Eastern wisdom and who wants to come into its influence, but later the book starts with, these rules are written for all disciples. So really, maybe a person who is not interested in self exploration or in this path, these rules leave aside being attracting or giving some motivation. These will actually look like a very impractical statements to that person, because later we'll see kill out ambition or all those things, and before the eyes can see, the tears should be impossible. A person who is not interested in this will find in them totally illogical and impractical things to do. So that is why that earlier the saying was that the eligibility of the person is looked first, the patrata, and then only we should talk to the person about those things. Otherwise we might even confuse the person. And also that these aphorisms, C.W. Leadbeater writes that T. Subbarao told him that these aphorisms, or similarly other books, have not just one meaning. They are they have various layers of meaning. Just like when we climb up the mountain, so we are at one height, we can see something. Then we go around the mountain, we come at the same spot, but at a higher level. From there, we can see the horizon even farther, and our vision is increased. And similarly, when we go up and up and up, or in and in and in, whatever terminology we want to use. So depending on our state of consciousness, we can find the meanings, hidden meanings in these aphorisms. And even when adeptship has been attained, it is said that once more, in some still higher sense, these same aphorisms may be taken as directions. So we can only imagine about that. And again, the effectiveness of the teachings is only when we are ready to implement them, when we are ready to not just say these are very good aphorisms, these are very good statements, I like them, I quote them, I memorize them. But until and unless we do an honest effort to live them, they won't be of much use and to us, just like any other statements. And as I was saying in the beginning, that although they are termed as preliminary statements, we can imagine the level of the profoundness of the book if these are the preliminary statements. Because preliminary means the one that is preceding or done in preparation for something fuller or more important. But the way that Sister Smita has explained to us the first two statements, I mean, by no chance there is a possibility that these preliminary statements are very easy to attain or to conceive, although we can understand them intellectually, but to really work on them, and then only we will be able actually to go into the book. Although we will continue the study and try our best to understand what is being said, but these preliminary statements itself are a kind of qualifications. And what are the qualifications? As we all saw just now, that we can actually divide them in two sets. The first two, as Sister Smita has discussed, is about the sight and hearing, the senses, our gyanendriyas, the sense organs. So for them to work properly, what are the conditions that have to be followed? And the crux of that thing is sense of separateness, which is the root cause of every suffering, has to be completely, whatever word we want to use, removed, or it should be dissolved or killed out, or whatever word we want to use. So the first two, the sight and hearing. Coming to the third one is speech and act, third and fourth. So till now we were told how to purify our sight and hearing. The third is because every action, I mean, not every action, but the action, before the action comes the speech, which is also a kind of action. So it is being said, before the voice can speak in the presence of the masters, it must have lost the power to wound. A very simple statement that one should not say something in the presence of masters, especially, that it has the power to wound or to injure someone else. Now, it can give us a sense that we should, always speak something to make others happy. Does that imply that? Even if that saying or speech may be true, not true, or beneficial or not beneficial. So what does this actually mean? That before the voice can speak in the presence of the masters, it must have lost the power to wound. Because even if you see the Mahatma letters, Mahatmas even have, even scolded or rebuked A.O. Hume a couple of times, and even sometimes at Sinet, and about something they have used very strong language, and many times A.O. Hume and A.P. Sinet got hurt or wounded. So does that mean that is the meaning of this statement? Or, I mean, how it affects the other person? Or what should be the state of being of the person who is speaking? One thing is that we say something to hurt someone, even in the name of truth. We use truth as to hurt somebody sometimes when we want to hurt somebody. Just like when we, power to wound, we want to hurt somebody mentally or emotionally, and we have the intention of wounding when we want to take revenge, or when we are so selfish, we are only thinking about ourselves, when we are jealous. All these are the symptoms of sense of separateness, that selfishness coming out of this sense of separateness. So I want this, and I can say something with the intention to wound. But that does not mean that when it is time to say something firm, something on which you disagree principally, yes, there are sutras which says that, satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat, na bruyat, satyam apriyam. We should always speak the brave words, as C. Rajadasa has said. We should always be true in speech, accurate, and, courteous. excuse me, without using derogatory words and all of that. But what about if the receptor, the person who is receiving the words, is such a person who gets hurt no matter what? So in that sense, I think this is not applicable, and especially when that's relation is a guru and chela relationship, a guru and disciple relationship, because what is getting wounded? Of course, no physical wound or physical injury, it's mental, emotional. So basically, every wound or injury is a reflection of ego. Ego in the sense of uh, pride or egotistical, not the ego as self, but ego means uh, the person who is has a very big image of himself or herself. So that image gets wounded. But the sole purpose of a guru is to break that image. So guru, of course, may devise certain situations, say certain things, which will actually, help the chela or disciple to remove or hurt the ego. So in that, and there have been examples in the scriptures of that being done. Another way that in which we hurt sometimes people, as Annie Besant says, by drawing attention to a fault in somebody's character. Everybody has faults, even, uh, nobody can claim until unless, of course, being an adept, to be free of any fault. But if we go on finding faults, like Kabir Das says, Bura jo dekhan main chala, when I started looking bad things, I was the worst one. So even if we are in a situation, if we are given a duty to find someone's faults, like being an auditor or being a teacher or being a supervisor, it's not the sole purpose to find fault, but to appreciate also. But even if there are faults, it is not right to just say in a bad manner or just, show them up in front of everyone. Or even if we have to address a fault of somebody or a mistake, we should always do it in private and in a very friendly manner, as Annie Besant says, that if the fault is pointed out with a perfectly friendly manner and understanding the state of the person, he may be or she may be scared or under pressure or stress. Basically, if we are to lose the power to wound, the separate individuality must go. Means we should feel complete compassion, the oneness with the person. Then only when we say something, then we are not saying with an intention to wound. So another aspect of wounding by speech that C.W. Leadbeater brings out is by the careless words. Again, being careless means being insensitive. And sometimes we are not so aware of the words that we are using, and we use some words or the way of speaking by being careless that we hurt other people. So that is also, that's why it is said that before speaking, we must, first of all, we must be patient, and we must give it a lot of thought before even speaking. Excuse me. So those are the things that this third preliminary statement says, that before we speak in the presence of the masters. And when it says presence of the masters, means when we are closer to our higher self, all such kind of speech will gradually, or will be ended. Or when this is ended, we are closer to our higher self. Again, the next statement is, before the soul can stand in the presence of the masters, its feet must be washed in the blood of the heart. A very, I would say, a statement full of a lot of strong words. And again, Annie Besant, when she explains this, she gives background of this statement that, earlier there used to be a tradition of promising with the blood sacrifice, or we see in the old movies, and maybe still being practiced in some of the places, that the people use the blood of their thumb or a finger to make a pact. And she also takes us to the old story in the past lives when HPB was the only son of the great king who is now Master Maurya, and Colonel Olcott was placed in charge of his life. And when they were outside, they were attacked, and Colonel Olcott gave, in that life, he gave his life to save the boy at the cost of his own life. So the king, that is the present Master Maurya, asked him, "What can I do for you who have given life for my son?" And he said, "Grant that your son and I may serve you in other lives forever." So that bond of sacrifice is so strong that in this life it has been, repaid. And that's what the master said, that the blood which has been shed for me, the bond between us shall never be broken. And that is the historical thing. But from the symbolical point of view, if we look the soul as our higher ego, and the presence of the master, higher self, monad, and the feet, its feet, it's saying. So our higher ego or the higher self is able to manifest itself in this world through personality. So the feet, the personality, and the blood of heart. Heart is considered the, the spiritual center of our being, just like the sun. So just like the sun is pumping the vitality, its light, heat, compassion, and everything through its physical body, similarly, the blood that the heart is pumping all throughout the body is like the compassion arising out of the feeling of oneness. Because when we feel one, realize ourselves one with the other, this feeling of compassion, love, metta, equanimity, everything automatically just, is pumps out from the center. So in that feeling of oneness, when our personality is completely dissolved and there is only compassion, then only we are eligible to stand in the presence of the masters. So that is something, that's what this statement, we can see how profound that statement is, and all four of them leads us to the point where the personality, the sense of separateness, has to be completely ended. And Annie Besant further explains it that the disciple must make a complete offering of everything. Basically, in other words, complete surrender. No more traces of self, lower self or personality or pride. And not just that, to any attachments, whatever he likes, dislikes, values, what seems to him in his very life, but he loses this only to find his higher life. So sometimes in life, there comes a situation when we have to choose. And she says, Annie Besant, that she knows people who got this opportunity, but due to non-readiness of themselves, they could not take that opportunity, and they still chose the, like somewhere we ask, like we go for a retreat in an ashram, let's say. So basically what we are going for a retreat for, for studying and for learning and for an insight or whatever, meditation. But if after going into the place, ashram, if immediately we are, putting all our attention, how's the food, what are the comforts, and, all those things. But again, there is like minimum level of comfort, maximum, we are not going into that. But if we are going to such a place, we should be in a state of mind Because if suppose I say, no, if there is no air conditioning, I cannot live there, so I'll not go there. I may miss out an opportunity of what I could have received there. So that's what she also says. And C.W. Leadbeater tells the same thing, that before we want to come in contact with our higher self, we have to sacrifice our lower self to the higher. That is the general law of life. And that is what he says, that many of the opportunities have been missed by the people. So basically, if we look at all these four statements, they are telling us how to somehow, sacrifice our lower self, surrender our lower self or personality to the higher, and the sense of separateness, which is the root cause of all evil, of all suffering, or which is also called Maya or ignorance, avidya, that has to be ended completely before we go ahead. So these were the four preliminary. I am again quoting the word preliminary because I don't think they are in any way preliminary, because they themselves are so profound that we need to work on them a lot before we even go ahead. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for your patience and giving me this opportunity. And I have an urgent work, so I would take leave, and I request you to excuse me. And Sister Smitapragyan will take over from here for any comments. And I'll make you the host, Smita, and then I will leave so you can end the meeting. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brother Shikhar. It was so nice, actually, when you explained very nicely. So these are the things, like looks very easy, like before the eyes can see, they must be incapable of tears. Before the ear can hear, it must have lost its sensitiveness. And before the voice can speak in front of the master, so it should lose its power to wound. And before the soul can stand in front of the master, its feet must be washed with the blood of heart. So these things are looks very easy. And like, okay, we can before the but they have explained, he has explained very nicely that it's not like you will feel your personal feelings and emotions should be kept aside, or you shouldn't feel anything when you need to practice. But at the same time, you have to do, like, you have to feel the pain and suffering of others. So, and above that, he is telling that not only that, if the person is present in front of us, we can feel the pain. But if he or she is not in front of us, can we feel the same pain? This is the thing. And one more thing, before the ear can hear, it must lost its power to, it lost its sensitiveness. So we generally like, I mean, as humans, we like if somebody praises us. So if we feel, I mean, that's the pride, we can say. I mean, this is the I-ness, that is the, we are feeling separated from others. We feel that we are separated. That is, so this is the thing. So, and if anybody says anything bad about us, then also we feel depressed. So this is, this thing should not be done. And so, and one more, before the voice can speak in the presence of the master, it must lost its power to wound. So we are very careless. We are not, we can say that, I can say this, we are not sensitive. We say whatever comes in our mind, or whatever you can say. So we don't care that we are hurting someone. So we should be, first thing, basic thing, we should be careful. So we know this thing. Think before you speak. We know, everybody know this sentence, that before speaking, think. So this is the thing. I mean, the basic thing is be careful. And one more thing is, if you will go to the disciple level thing, then it's like in at the foot of the master, it's written that whatever you speak, your words should be true, kind, and helpful. It's not that it's true. I'm talking the truth. So it's not like I'm talking the truth and I'm hurting someone. So the words should be true, kind, and help. So as a disciple, I mean, these things are like for us, like true, kind, and helpful. But for in the disciples level, if you will speak in front of the master, who is so compassionate, who is so loving, whose words are so carefully picked up in front of us, if we will speak anything bad or any hurting sentences, then that will be so I can say bad. And one more fourth statement was the soul, before the soul can stand in front of the master, its feet should be washed with the blood of heart. So that you should be so dedicated towards our master, so that you can do anything, you can sacrifice yourself to help others, or to work with him, or to be an instrument for in the hands of our master. So these are the things. I'll not take this. I'll not talk much. But so this is the thing. So we are open for discussion. If anybody wants to discuss anything, then we can. Anyone wants to say anything, or otherwise we will close
Hello.
the session. Yes. Yes,
Please
Hemant ji.
unmute me.
Yes, you are unmuted.
Are you listening to me? I am
Yes,
Dr. Hemant Sharma, retired professor of psychology from Jodhpur University, Rajasthan. May I ask one observation to you or the learned speaker? He has discussed many positive emotions as well as some negative emotions like jealousy, envy, hatred. In psychology, we have worked so much on anxiety, depression, stress, aggressiveness, hostility, but very less, few work has been done on emotion of envy or jealousy or hatred. I want to know, according to our masters or our theosophists, how can we overcome these negative emotions in our life, in our family, at our workplace, with our friends, even in our organization. So please have some light on these three negative emotions. Also, it is a negative question, but we want to overcome as we have to manage anger, anxiety, depression, stress, tension, etc. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So all your negative emotions are what I am, as per my level, I'll tell you, I'm not very learned. So I'm for the negative emotions, he has already explained. So for any negative emotions, to avoid or to remove all the emotions, first thing is that we have studied, we have read so many books, and we know that this is a negative emotion, this is a positive emotion. So first thing is, when the negative emotion comes, we need to replace it with the exactly opposite positive emotion. So first, what will happen in the starting stage? What will happen? You will not understand that, and as we discussed, it's not the work of a day or two or a month or a year. It may take several lives. So we need to practice. So what happens if any negative emotion comes? We need to first identify it. So we need to be aware. First, what will happen? We will do. When the negative emotion comes, we will flow with it, and then we will understand that, okay, I did this. Oh, I got angry. How? But after it happens, then we understand. But slowly, slowly, when we will practice and when we will be aware that it will happen at the time when the emotion comes, at the exact time you will recognize that emotion, that, oh, I'm getting angry now, or I'm getting jealousy, I'm feeling jealousy now. So then at that time you will try to replace it with the positive, opposite positive emotion. And slowly, slowly, after practicing it, the negative emotion will go away. So I think this thing. So
Right.
anybody else wants to say anything? If Vimalji, if wants to say anything, or
Thank you
Harinath,
very much.
yeah. So I guess you got your answer, or
So, Smita, is it audible? Harinath this side.
yes, yes, Harinath.
I just want to add something to this. Like, suppose you want to end this negative emotion completely, you should go to the root of it. First of all, there is no such thing like negative emotion and positive emotions. The moment you have divided the emotions into two, negative and positive, then you always try to dominate one the other. Okay. The thing is, everything is emotion. Don't divide it into negative and positive. Okay. Let's see it in only one angle. Okay. We take it as emotion family. Okay. How these emotions are coming into your mind, or how these emotions are acting on your limbic system, how these emotions are getting into the picture. It's just completely based on the chemical reactions that are placing by your brain, if you see in a physical way. But how these chemical reactions are coming into picture is again decided by the mind. Okay. So once if you see it in divided way, like this is negative, this is positive, you always try to control one the other. Okay, either you will replace it is a temporary thing again, right? You can replace it and it takes some time, and after that also that is not a confirmation. Like you can avoid it completely. Okay, again it may come in the next day. Okay, if you want to remove the complete structure of that, what you are calling the negative emotion, first of all, let us understand what is emotion and how these emotions are coming into picture, how these emotions are dominating my brain or dominating my mind. So if you understand that first, then you will find a different picture at all. Okay. So I suggest mind plays a very key role in this emotions picture. That's the reason we always try to keep our mind calm. If you want to keep our mind calm, we should be in a place to know entire the play or the game that are playing by the emotions. So my suggestion is don't divide the emotions into positive or negative, but see in a one way. Like these are all emotions. For suppose the negative emotion for me is a positive emotion for others, right? Sometimes I feel anger, but it is a good thing for me. I should have to feel anger at that time. So I think you got my point, right?
Yeah, yeah, Mr. Harinath. Thank you. Vimalji, would you like to add something to it?
Basically, it's interesting to think that both Krishnamurti and Buddha said the same thing, but in different language. Like what the Buddha said was that when something arises, watch its arising and let it subside. So see that it has, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a feeling, whether it's a thought, whether it's a bodily sensation, anything that arises, you can sense it, and then it stays for some time and then it subsides. So the other word that Krishnamurti used for the same kind of experience is choiceless awareness. It just watch it, it'll come and it'll go away. So that has been offered as a solution for negative emotions or thoughts, mainly thoughts. I agree that let's not call it positive or negative. Any thought, even a thought which is like a moment feeling of pride, is it a negative emotion? No, it's not. But it is a harmful thing to feel superior, is a harmful thing. So you watch a thought arising, then it subsides, and that is appears to be a solution offered by the oldest sage that we know and the newest. So I think as a psychologist, I mean, that would be a good way to ask people to experiment with themselves and see whether it works.
Thank you, Vimalji. I think if anybody who has anything to say or ask, you can ask. Otherwise, we'll close the session. Okay, then. We will close the session with a closing prayer. And thank you everyone for joining. So Asato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Ramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashantu Ma Kaschit Dukkhava Bhavet. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you everyone for joining. And the timing is same on Sunday morning, 9 o'clock. It has changed. So I think everybody has, some people has some confusion about it. So it's 9 o'clock every Sunday. So thank you. Meet you next Sunday. Same time, 9 o'clock. Happy Sunday.
Thank you, Smita.
Thank you, Vimalji.